Well, good evening. So good to see you all. Welcome to Grace Church. Welcome to Houston, home of the world champion Houston Astros. Twice. We can get into details later. You're probably wrong on some other theology. Twice. Anyway, so glad you're here. And I want to say on behalf of myself and Melanie and then my brother Brett and Giselle, it is our joy, along with all the team, to host Destiny. This is our tribe, our family. Many of you we know, we love. And then I tell you what, and if you don't love Phil and Kathy Brassfield, I don't think you're saved. They're just too easy to love. And I'll tell you something else that's really challenging is to try to, have you ever tried to give them a no? It's not because he's so persistent, but when you love somebody like that, you just find your head doing this on whatever it is that they ask for. So we're honored to host. I will tell you, the Lowe's and Christ Church and West Monroe raised the bar so high on hospitality and warmth and everything that I've been a little anxious about that, and I've told Pastor Tom that even last night, because they know how to welcome you, give that good Louisiana hospitality. But anyways, we're delighted you're here, and I have been blessed since last night. Thought I would just dash in and out, but man, it is so good to fellowship, isn't it? To talk with one another, to visit. And then I'm excited right now. Again, the youth are having service next door, and then the kids are they're over there, and they're giving them caffeine and sugar and chocolate just to love on you that way and bless you later. And but we're just delighted you're here. And I want to say this to Pastor Landon, the Reverend Dr. Landon Galloway. That was fantastic this morning. I lost it. There he is. Man, such a great word. Just want to throw this out. Dr. Phil said I could do this. Something that Dr. Landon and I are doing that it was not something we had ever thought about doing. It literally presented itself to us. Is together, along with a couple of guys we're going to try to help bring along. One, Dr. Leonard Sweet, author of over 70 books, and then another, Dr. A.J. Swoboda. You may not know him, but A.J. Swoboda is one of the most foremost Pentecostal theologians today from Oregon. Just a phenomenal writer. You should get his book on Subversive Sabbath, and anything he's written you should get. But we have Southeastern University, which Justin Lathrop, the vice president, was here this morning, is allowing us to present an executive master's program for leaders, pastors, ministers, anyone who wants. If you want to get a master's degree, it'll base out of Grace. It'll base here, and it's going to be phenomenal. And we'd like for it to be a tribe thing. So there's a booth out in the lobby. I encourage you, if you're interested in pursuing and growing and going that way, let's talk, and we'd love to have you be a part of that. The other thing I want to say is welcome to all of our international guests. We have a strong international presence here this year, and it's just phenomenal. We have Lithuania, we have India, we have Haiti, we've got Delaware, we've got, people from foreign countries all over, and I'm sure I missed some, but we're delighted to have you all here. So let me jump in and welcome all our guests. I have in my head, and I know what conference preachers are, and I are not that. I'm just a fellow laborer with you. I have a heart for pastors and leaders in ministry, and I just want to share my heart. And what's crazy is, and I told Pastor Landon earlier, we did not, even though we work at the same church, we did not compare, what are you doing, here's what I'm doing. But God obviously had a word for the conference for Wednesday. And you'll see how I love it when he does that. He puts things together, which means he's mindful of you. You're on his mind. He's thinking of you. He sees you. He sees what you're facing. He sees what you're dealing with. Ladies and gentlemen, it is not easy to pastor and lead and serve in a church in this day. Well, thank you, Melanie, and one other. You know what? That shows you're so nervous you're afraid to say that. Yes, it is tough. My late Uncle Jimmy Jones was a joke teller, and he told a joke about a boxer, and the story was that the trainer was just such a hype guy, And he told him, "You got this, buddy, you got this. You get out there, the bell rings, the first round starts," and he gets out in the first round, and he just gets pummeled. And he is getting hit and punched, and then the bell rings, and he's trying to find the right corner. He gets in the corner, he sits down on the bench, and the trainer hops up and says, "He hadn't touched you, hadn't laid a glove on you. You're too fast, you're too good, you got this. And the bell rings, and he goes back out, and there's more pummeling, there's blood, there's a swollen eye, and the bell rings, and they do have to show him, this is your corner, and he sits down, and the trainer hops up and says, "I'm telling you, he hadn't laid a glove on you. You were awesome, you got this. He's too slow, you got him." And the bell rings, and he goes back out. There's more pummeling, and the other eye's now swollen almost shut, and he's dragging himself to the corner, thanking God the bell rang, and he sits down, and the trainer says, "You got it. Hadn't laid a glove on you, hadn't gotten near you." And he said, "Well, do me a favor. Keep an eye on the ref, because somebody is beating the crud out of me." So I'm here to tell you tonight, he hadn't laid a glove on you. You're good. You got this. Actually, I do want to tell you, I want to start with this. The fix is in. The fix is in. Hebrews 10:35. "Therefore, do not throw away your confidence, which has great reward, for you have need of endurance, so that when you have done the will of God, you may receive what is promised." And then he starts quoting Habakkuk, and he jumps over to Habakkuk, and he quotes, "For yet a little while, and the coming one will come and not delay. But my righteous one shall live by faith. And if he shrinks back, my soul has no pleasure in him." But now he's jumping back in. He's not quoting Habakkuk, and he's letting everybody know. He's reminding them, we are not of those who shrink back and are destroyed. Won't you turn to somebody you didn't travel with and tell them, we are not the ones who shrink back. Yeah, it's okay. Fake it till you make it. Just say it. You'll end up believing it. Because he said what's going to happen is we're those who have faith and preserve their souls. We don't shrink back. But the struggle is real. The challenges of the day are overwhelming. One of the pastors who's a part of Destiny, I was texting with him the other day, and he said he's going to be here, and I asked, What do you think people need to hear? What should we talk about? And he talked about literally the challenges of the day, what it's like right now to lead and serve and pastor in the day we are living in. Now, I doubt I'm talking to one pastor in this room who has not offended somebody or estranged somebody by something you did say or you did not say. So it's either that you did or you didn't. People are on edge. People are angry. People are struggling. People they're struggling with commitment to the local church. And right now, I'm just referring to the pastors. And my desire is just to encourage you tonight and to tell you, hey, don't throw away your confidence. Don't throw away your confidence, because it has a great reward. And you need endurance so that when you have done what you're supposed to do, God will reward you the way he wants to reward you. Hold on a little longer. I want to encourage you with that. Oh, by the way, the just shall live by faith. And whatever you do, don't shrink back. What we have in my spirit is, I just feel like we have a Valley of Elah scenario going on. In the Valley of Elah, it's in 1 Samuel 17, and I'll read some from it. You're all too familiar with it. You know this. If you grew up as a church kid, you saw it on flannel graph, or you're familiar with it. It's in the Valley of Elah that Saul and the Israelites are camped on one side, and on the other side are the Philistines. And the Valley of Elah is the proving ground. It's where your faith is tested. You do know you will not walk into your destiny without a battle. And the proving ground is where you face your fears. The proving ground is where your heart is tested. Your motives are tested and sifted. Your loyalties will be questioned in the Valley of Elah on the proving ground. The proving ground is where you'll discover what your capacity is. You might stand head and shoulders above everybody else and be a leader's leader, but in the Valley of Elah, we'll find out if you're really willing to take on something bigger than you. But it's also where you see the faithfulness of God. I wish I could tell you you only face the proving ground once in your life. But I'm just going to tell you, there's a truth here. You're going to face it more than once. Now, they say new levels, new devils. Truth there. I'll tell you this. You might not, Pastor Landon said he's a young 37. I'm a young 57. I'm going to tell you what I face at 57 is not what I faced at 37 or 27. But you still have proving grounds, and you still have challenges, and you still have tests. And I know I'm talking to men and women who here's what I know about everybody here. You're either in the Valley of Elah, or you're on your way to the Valley of Elah, or you're coming out of the Valley of Elah. But whatever, you've been there or you're going to be there, because we will all be tested and tried in some area of our life. And the giant shape shifts and may look different in one season than another. But the fact of the matter is, when it comes to this life we live, some days you're the dog and some days you're the fire hydrant. But I've also discovered God is faithful. And His grace is sufficient. On one side, we've got King Saul. On the other side, we've got the champion, Goliath from Gath. In that century of time, the average height of a male was 5 feet 1 inch. So if that was their average height, we know that Goliath comes in somewhere about 9 feet 9 inches. So we've got a 5'1" and a 9'9". And this champion from Gath is as big and as bad as they come. David is sent by his dad. He'd just been anointed, but he's tending sheep, and dad sends him with breads and grains for his brothers and supplies and cheese for the captains, and with the instruction, bring word back to me. I want to know how the battle is going. And when David arrives, he sees the army. Everybody's prepared for battle. Nobody's engaging. You know this story better than I do. Goliath walks out on the front line twice a day and does the same thing. 1 Samuel 17, verse 8. He stood and shouted to the ranks of Israel, "Why have you come out to draw up for battle? Am I not a Philistine, and are you not servants of Saul? Choose a man for yourselves and let him come down to me. If he's able to fight with me and kill me, then we will be your servants. But if I prevail against him and kill him, then you shall be our servants and serve us." And the Philistines said, I defy the ranks of Israel this day. Give me a man that we might fight together. This was a common thing that could happen, is rather than there be a lot of blood shed, let's pick one champion from each side, and whatever happens there settles the duel. Saul and the Israelites are paralyzed with fear. 40 days, he throws out the gauntlet, and Israel quivers. And then here comes DoorDash. David shows up with a delivery for his brothers and the captains, and he's just taking it in. He has only been in the valley of Elah for maybe a couple of hours, and the same threats that have not moved anyone in Israel for 40 days stir him immediately to action. And Saul had offered two things. He said, whoever takes him on and lives, number one, you get my daughter's hand in marriage. I don't know what she looked like, but you could be the son-in-law of the king. The second thing is you will become a 501c3. No taxes. It's the first time it's mentioned right there. David's response is not determined by reward. It's determined by what's right. So here's something I've learned is your motivation will affect your elevation. And he's not motivated by the girl. He's not motivated by no taxes. He's motivated by what's the right thing here. He could have kept his mouth shut. He could have gone right back home to daddy and told him, Dad, it's not good. That's what he was assigned to do. You must know in this day that we live, you don't have to look for the line. The lines are being crossed in front of us. Or let me say it this way. There is no neutral corner anymore. And there are some that what we'd like to do is I want to kind of stay quiet, do my thing, preach the word, love on people, and I don't want no harm, no foul, no trouble. We're not in that day anymore. Goliath looms larger and roars louder than ever before, and he is all in our business, and he's edging closer and closer onto our turf. In fact, in 1 Samuel 17, this story, the Philistines were encamped in Soko, which belonged to Judah. So they've already taken in territory that they wanted previously in battle. They're already encroaching on God's people and on their turf. When we got a battle line, it's not even on neutral territory. They are in Israel's property. And he is screaming, somebody come and face me. Twice a day, 40 days, yelling the same thing. One good man. And there's zip, zero, nada. No one makes a move. And then there's David with the charcuterie, looking at what's going on. And I want you to just read with me, starting in verse 23. As he talked with them, David with the delivery, behold, the champion, the Philistine of Gath, Goliath by name, came up out of the ranks of the Philistines and spoke the same words as before. And David heard him. And all the men of Israel, when they, and my underlines obviously, when they saw the man, fled from him and were much afraid. And the men of Israel said, have you seen this man? Would everybody just say man? Man. Thank you for humoring me. I know this is preachers and communicators, but they saw the man. Then they asked, have you seen the man? Surely he has come up to defy Israel. And the king, and they're talking, the king will enrich the one who kills him with great riches and will give him his daughter and make his father's house free in Israel. And David said to the men who stood by, what should be done for the man who kills the Philistine and takes away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? Now, just hold on. This has been going on for 40 days, twice a day. Best I can tell with my math, that's 80 times that he has done this. And we know about 80 times they have had the same response. Have you seen the man? And they fled from the man, and they talk about the man. And the first time David sees him, he asks a question. Who is the uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? David is the first one after over a month who raises a theological question about the giant. Everyone else is talking about the big man. Everyone, we underlined it for you, is talking about the size of the giant. We've got detail about how much his armor weighed, how heavy was his spear. We have got great data on the champion from Gath. We know all about him. Everybody's looking at the man. David wants to talk theology. You see, there's basically two ways you can look at the challenges in your life. You can look at them anthropologically, which is the study or the science of man. An anthropologist is one who studies the science of man. Or you can look at those situations theologically. Theology, a theologist is one who studies the science of God. They were studying the man. David wanted to talk theology. While we're overwhelmed with the size of the giant, we're forgetting the size of God. We are literally so consumed with the yelling voice and the size of the challenge that we have forgotten how great, how big, how large, how vast, how wide is our God. Talking about champion, King of kings, Lord of lords. He never been another like him, will be no other. He's God. Saul and the Israelites see this 9'9" giant who is well armed and strong because they're absolutely looking through their human eyes. David looks and raises a theological question, a spiritual question concerning the circumcision of the big guy. You and I have got to get it through our heads that God doesn't look at things the way we do. He's not looking at this day the way we live, that we live in the way we do. He's not looking at your challenges the way you do. In fact, just one chapter earlier, whenever Jesse's son, somebody's going to be anointed king, they're running the gauntlet. And Samuel's saying, bring me your boys. And they're bringing him all the sons. And God keeps saying, no, not him, not him. Do you have any other? 1 Samuel 16, the Lord said to Samuel, do not look at his appearance on the height of his stature, because I rejected him. For the Lord sees not as man sees. Man looks on the outward appearance, but the Lord, he's looking at the heart. So there's a pastor, there's a leader, there's somebody here tonight that you need to get this into your spirit today. You are judging your giant by the outward appearance. You have forgotten your theology and you have become an anthropologist. Meanwhile, in God's eye view, he's got a handle on the situation. He's in control. We are overwhelmed and we are dismayed because we forget we've got God we can bring into the equation. There was a boy, they lived on land, and his task, he was a teenager, was to clear all the debris, all the rocks, get everything off the land, and he was clearing the land of rocks and debris. And he's doing it, he comes upon one rock, it's big. In fact, it's so big that he can't move it. And he pushes and it doesn't move. And he pushes it again, it doesn't move. So then he backs up to it and he works that way. About that time, Dad comes out. Dad's got a thermos of coffee. He's sipping coffee, watching him. And he's saying, "You got that one? I'm going to get it, Daddy." And the boy keeps pushing. And he's shoving and he's trying to move this rock. Dad says, "Use all your strength." "Okay, Dad, I'm going to use all my," and the boy just keeps straining and pushing, and it's not moving. And Dad says, "Come on, son, use all your strength." "Okay, I'm trying, Dad. I'm pushing. I'm moving. And it's just not moving." And Dad says again, "Come on, son, use all your strength." He said, "Daddy, I am." He said, "No, you're not. You haven't even asked me to help yet." And I'm going to tell you, until you invite the Father in to help you, you're not using all your strength. And some of you are trying to fight battles that God said, "I'll handle it if you'll invite me into the equation." We're preaching, but we're anthropologists. We're not theologists. We're just, have you seen the giants we are facing? The issue about circumcision was a spiritual matter. It was a physical sign of a spiritual covenant between a man and God. God said that when that little Jewish boy, on the 8th day after his birth, he will be placed into a covenant. It's going to be a sign of being in protective custody with me. And I'm going to be his God, and they're going to be my people. And whoever curses them will be cursed. Whoever blesses them will be. And God laid out all the rules. You're a part of people that God said, "I'm going to guide, I'm going to protect, I'm going to see you through, and we're going to have this sign." And now we're back to the battle, and Saul and all the others just see a big man with big threats, and they are so scared. David sees someone who is out of covenant, out of relationship, not in the will of God, because he's looking at the whole thing theologically. He is not at all studying the man. He's studying what God said about any situation. He realized this man may be big, but he is not in covenant with Jehovah. He does not have God with him. Sure, his armor weighs about 150 pounds, but is that all? We're in a Valley of Elah season. There are giants yelling at us, taunting, begging for a showdown. They have encroached on our territory. Make sure you keep a theological perspective. Don't forget, we don't wrestle flesh and blood. We have an enemy, and it's not the people that you're dealing with. If you're running from a giant in your life because things appear too big for you to handle, you may have forgotten your covenant. I marvel at the way I see pastors and Christians responding to this woke, broke society. We are not looking through a theological lens at all. We are flabbergasted to see Christian morals erode here in the United States. And I'm not happy about it. And I know my audience, my tribe, I'm just sharing my heart. Remember 2020? Were we the only church that launched January with a series, we just called it 2020 Vision? Ooh. Didn't see that coming. So much for that 2020 vision. And then this pandemic hits. Goliath roars. Our Easter attendance that year was 0. Now online we figured out that, if they hover for a second with their mouse, it can count as a view. Sorry, let me get back theological, not. But the pandemic was not just COVID. The pandemic was then the senseless murder of Ahmaud Arbery, and then George Floyd, and then Goliath rears back and roars with racism and division. And then there was a presidential election. And Goliath had really felt his Wheaties then. And he started yelling, and there were a lot of prophets who are kind of non-prophets. It seemed legit because, and this is, by the way, and Dr. Phil, I'm sorry. Why is it when some men prophesy, why does God only speak King James? I heard one guy in the middle of that say, "For thus saith the Lord, thrice have I come." I was like, thrice? I gotta even, hold on, let me think, what is thrice? God is not current with the times to say three? But they were prophesying in King James, and then they were coming back and saying, "Behold, what I actually meanteth was," and we were changing the prophecies, and Goliath is roaring, and many in God's camp started studying man instead of focusing on God. And it all became then about, man, and a lot of men, and oh, God. And we didn't come by unscathed at Grace. I don't know if anybody did. I'll tell you, I learned about this church in 2020. One thing I learned is this church is deeper, stronger, and it's a beautiful body of believers. I learned that their heart was here, and the reason why I knew their heart was here is because their treasure was here even when their bodies weren't here. And I realized, hey, I thought we had a crowd, but we have a church. We got people that love God and believe in His promises. And matter of fact, they're a little more theologically correct than I am, because I'm kind of studying man right now. And Goliath roared. All that pandemic. We had one family, 30 years times. When you pastor for someone that long, you've married, you've buried. Sometimes you've married more than once. And 30 years said, we got it, we're leaving. Well, what happened? What's up? Oh, by email. It's amazing how bold these things are, aren't they? And what happened? And this was the response. I just can't stand the idea that I might be standing next to someone and worshiping and know they didn't vote like I voted. Now, show me whether they're studying God or studying man. I can't worship next to somebody that didn't vote the way I voted. And then pastors started pandering on either extreme. And some replaced the lamb with a donkey, and then others with an elephant. And there's literally one church that had cutouts of presidents you could pose with in the lobby. And Goliath screaming his vial. And most of the church stayed in its tents. And pastors and leaders' emotional health is in decline. And like Saul, we've slayed our thousands, but man, I don't know what to do with this giant. We keep looking at everything anthropologically rather than theologically. And so depression and suicide and addiction among Christian leaders has grown. And as I said earlier, I don't know of a church or a leader or a person who hasn't been, no one got by unscathed. No one has been through that. And I'll tell you, they don't teach how to do that in the seminary. And Goliath roared louder than ever. And people are angry and polarized from one another and not even sure why. And then somewhere in the middle of all the fear-mongering and the agenda-driven media and racial divide and political unrest, the Philistines are just moving in and taking more territory. And they're in Judah now, and they're just kind of taking land that belongs to God's people. And we're in our tents talking about the giant, never rehearsing our theology. We talk about faith and preach faith, but Habakkuk's reminder, hey, the just will live by faith. Christians have been persecuted all over the world. I know we're American. To date, 110 nations report persecution primarily among Christians. But we're Americans. These colors don't run. We just didn't think it would ever happen here. American Christianity is soft around the middle. We'll quote the Beatitudes because I want to bless the poor in spirit. I want to bless the meek. Bless those who mourn. What about in the middle where Jesus said in verse 10, blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when others revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven, for so they persecuted the prophets that were before you. Well, I like to read it and quote it. I know I was going to have to live it. Not here. This is America. The spirit of Saul is alive and well because we want presence without persecution, victory without opposition. Wait, no one told me there's going to be giants. I thought I was going to put on my armor, go out in the battle, and just win because God's on my side. That's like Paul saying, whoa, 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 whoa. Chains, Praetorian Guard. I just wanted to share love. But we are those who don't shrink back. Listen, you can choose your style. You can choose your furniture. Some of you might like the 60s, and some of you may live, your furniture might be Victorian. I don't know. You can choose your music. You can choose your style. You can choose your furniture, but you don't get to choose your day. That was a prearranged marriage. God chose it for us, and He knew you and I could pastor and lead and serve today. He chose it. And I'm just talking to me and letting you listen in because I want everybody to like me. And I'm a lover, not a fighter. I want my Norman Rockwell America back. I want every house to have an American flag in the lawn and a cross off the front door and a white Jesus hanging over the dining room table. I almost put up the one I want us to have. I mean, he's pretty. Hair parted in the middle. Jim Kilgore wore his hair that way back in the 80s. I want prayer back in schools. I'm weary with politics, and I'm weary with the woke agenda, and I'm weary with the hyper-extreme pandering done by some pastors, but that's just me looking at everything anthropologically. That's just Scott looking at it as a guy. Theologically, we have been told, it's in the book, that things are going to get worse and worse. And we are told people are going to have itching ears. And we're told there's going to be a falling away. And we're told that it's just going to, matter of fact, the King James says it's going to wax worse and worse. And all that's going to happen. And it also says that the church will prevail. And that in the end, we win. And he is still God, and he's still in control, and he knows what he's doing, and he's not dumbfuzzled. He's not backing up, trying to figure out what's going on. He's totally in control. We just thought it would happen to our neighbors in other countries and not us. Because we've been studying man, we're not really studying God. If there can be saints in Caesar's household, where Christians are being martyred, burned as human torches, surely I can suck it up. And instead of hoping someone will just cue Lee Greenwood to sing, "I'm proud to be an American," maybe I should just pick up my shield of faith and the sword of the Spirit and be a child of God and a soldier in his kingdom and fight the good fight. Oh, and reach souls, because people are looking for an answer and they're hungry for something spiritual and they need us. And if God's called you to the political field, get out there and God bless you if that's where you're supposed to be. However you're supposed to do it, but I'm called to pastor, and I just believe if this whole nation goes to pot, the church is still going to grow, and people still need Jesus, and I'm still going to reach them, serve them, preach to them, love them. They need the Word of God. They need what He says. Or I can just take my toys and go home, because I don't like, and I don't. Man, when you're in the valley of Elah, remember your covenant. The way Christianity grew in the 1st and 2nd centuries, in Rome, we're baptismal candidates. It wasn't about getting the t-shirt. Ours say old made new. Some say I have decided. They literally knew, as a baptism candidate, it is highly likely every Christian is by definition a candidate for death. And they're like, baptize me. Baptize me. The conversion of Romans, because of seeing the faith of the ones they were persecuting. The saints there in Caesar's household, it was an interesting thing I learned, that they knew, for us the middle finger is the greatest insult, but back in that day, crucifixion was a curse. And so if you ever did this to somebody, you were literally, that was their middle finger, because you're saying, crucify you, get your donkey off the road. They had traffic. They had emissions problems. Bumper stickers that, said, I told you, it happens. And because it was the day they lived in. But in Caesar's household, among the believers, whenever they figured out, wait a minute, I think I'm picking up that we have the same kind of faith. They might just do this. And just by the cross of the finger, I'm letting you know. Like Spence said, I'm in the capital C church. That's the kind of persecution. It was that type of persecution. And I am just so aggravated here because we spent so much on hand sanitizer. There's so much in this setting. I'm gonna quit. I could talk about David, the other challenges. David and his own brother Eliab. Eliab didn't like his fervor, and we fight among ourselves. Satan takes the day off. We got enough devils and giants to deal with. Let's not bog down with one another over whatever you're doing is a little different than what I do, or vice versa. Some great theologian said something about we might all hang together unless we hang separately. Let's get together. Let's get together on what we agree on. But Eliab's putting him down, talking to him. And then Saul, the way he belittled him. Verse 33, Saul said, "You are not able to go against this Philistine to fight with him. You are but a youth. He's been a man of war from his youth." These are the tools the enemy will use on us. Saul meant well, but he was setting this young man up for certain death by belittling him, because David was going to come at the battle different. I haven't been speaking frankly. Can I speak frankly from me? This is to my generation, and that kills me, because I always like being the young generation, speaking to the older generation. But since I'm right on the edge of being in that, there's a generation coming on. They love God with all their heart, all their soul, all their mind, all their strength. And they see the same giant you and I see, but their approach to the battle will be different. They've already fought lions, they fought bears, they faced more temptation at the bus stop than you and I might have faced in our life. They have dealt with adverse teaching. They have dealt with deconstruction. They understand the adversity to the Christian lifestyle. They're very hip on technology. They've got haircuts like alpacas. They've got the attention span of a gnat. When it comes to communication, they're literally all thumbs, and they are giant slayers. They're ready. And they're not going to wear my... Here's a thought. I ought to get behind them and be wind in their sails. I should encourage them. I should make sure they know I believe in you. And then I ought to put on my armor and go with them. You keep slinging, I'll keep swinging. Together we'll take on the giants. Generations together. The musicians will come. David picked up 5 smooth stones. I know 5's the number of grace. 5's all this. I don't think he was thinking real deep like that. I think he knew that Goliath had family. We know David faced at least 4 other giants. You know, you don't just do one and done. In fact, Ishbi-Benob almost killed David. And Abishai stepped in at the last minute. Literally, read it, David was cornered. Saph, Lami, one guy, we don't have a name for him, but he had 6 fingers on every hand and 6, he could hang 12. He had 6 toes on both feet. They don't even have a name for him. David picked up 5, because you don't just face giants once. Verse 44, the Philistines said to David, "Come to me, and I will give your flesh to the birds of the air and to the beasts of the field." And David said to the Philistine, notice, he never got off of his theology. He always knew it's about God. Now, I want to make sure I say this with all humility. My heart's full, but I'm not saying we just sit and watch what's happening in our country. I'm not saying that at all. But I'm saying we have cowered in our tents, so frustrated. And I have literally thought to myself, God, all this talk about socialism, if the United States turned communist, you'd still have a church here, wouldn't you? Wouldn't you? I mean, you wouldn't like migrate out, would you, God? You'd stay. And you'd still want people saved, filled with the Spirit, and you'd still want pastors and laborers. I mean, you said the field is ready for harvest. I don't know if I'm making sense to you, but this is Scott's talk when I'm talking to me about, I don't like what I see, but The fix is in. David never went beyond theology. You come to me with a sword and with a spear and with a javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defiled. He kept the battle theological. We've got to keep the battle theological. You've not met a person with skin on who doesn't need Jesus. Even if they don't know they need Jesus, even if they think they hate everything about Jesus, David he always kept it about God. And David was able to say the victory before he could ever see the victory. He has no sword, but listen to what he says. Verse 46. If the Bible's not grabbing you, get Malcolm Gladwell's book on David and Goliath. Verse 46. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hand, and I will cut you down and cut off your head, and I will give the dead bodies of the host of the Philistines this day to the birds of the air and to the wild beasts of the earth, that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel, and that all this assembly may know that the Lord saves, not with sword and spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hand. When the Philistine arose and came and drew near to meet David, David ran quickly toward the battle line to meet the Philistine. Can you imagine Goliath's shock when this kid sets the pace? And he is not in a defensive posture, but he is running after him. David sets the pace. Verse 49, and David, keep it, he's running, and he's grabbing one of the five, and he's slinging. I like to think he's left-handed while he's running. And he took out a stone, slung it, and struck the Philistine on the forehead. The stone sank into his forehead, and he fell on his face to the ground. So David prevailed over the Philistine with a sling and with a stone, and struck the Philistine and killed him. There was no sword in the hand of David. Then David ran, stood over the Philistine, took the sword, and drew it out of its sheath and killed him. That's actually the second time he's killed him, according to this. You want to make sure they stay dead. And cut off his head with it. You know, a good sermon title would have been How to Get Ahead in the Valley of Elah. When the Philistines saw that their champion was dead, they fled. Here's my question. What do you think took Goliath down? Was it the stone? And if you read Malcolm Gladwell, he'll tell you how these were sharpshooters with a sling. Great book. Did the stone get him, or did God get him? My belief, both. David used what he had, and he followed in obedience, and he kept the battle the Lord's. And when he let go of the stone, the one who controls the wind, I think, handled the trajectory and put a little Nolan Ryan Express oomph on it. Because that's what I'm supposed to do. It's what you're supposed to do. I'm going to face the giant, and I'm going to do what I can with what I have. And God is still God. I'm not. And he'll handle the battles. It is his. It is not mine. My question for you tonight is, what giant are you facing? During worship, I just felt in the room. I actually, yesterday, 3 pastors, 3 solid men, talked to me at different times, different conversations about the way they were raised and the lack of a solid or a good or a godly father. And now these are men of God who are, they're incredible men of God. But I just know enough about the enemy to know that's something three different men yesterday just saying the exact same thing while we're in the lobby talking, almost quoting one another, but talking their story. And Satan can use something about generations and try to make you feel disqualified because you don't have a legacy like the Clarks or the Herons or he can do that. And then we're worshiping, and I'm thinking, man, and then there are some here, there are some women that feel, they're literally like, give me children lest I die. You're just fighting with infertility, and you just, and I'm going to tell you, if you look at everything just through physical eyes, that's one way. But if you can also get eyes of the Spirit and understand, wait a minute, usually there's a correlation in ministry, and what we're birthing in ministry can also be what's happening in our covenant of marriage. And maybe God's working something, and it's not about His will, it's about His time, and I'm going to trust Him. And I'm just asking, what is your giant? I had a pastor tell me today a miracle where a bank tried to call a note, and then God flexed and worked a financial miracle that this is a solid pastor, and he's smart, but he's not that smart to be able to pull off what God did. What's your giant? There's so many of you in building programs. What are you facing? Do you believe or not that He's on your side? Have you looked at it theologically once, or are you just looking at it anthropologically and trying to figure out how am I going to save them? You're not. How am I going to reach? How am I going to lead them? How am I going to? There's another way. He's able. That's that song they sing, He's able. I want to ask you to stand, and I just want to invite anyone, and you see now how Pastor Landon and I God just took today to just kind of come back and reaffirm. He took something old, something new, New Testament, Old Testament, to tell you the same thing today. God's got it. He's in control. Take a breath. Breathe in the Spirit. Let someone minister to you. I want to invite, if there's anyone right now and you're facing a giant, just come on down. Just come on down, and Destiny's one big family. We're going to encourage one another. We're going to strengthen you. You're going to strengthen yourself. You can encourage yourself in the Lord. You got to remind yourself about the bear and the lion. You got to remind yourself what you've already faced and already dealt with, and let's just let God encourage you. Come on, just step up as close as you can, because we've got pastors and bishops and friends and family around here. Some of you've got adult children. I'm a blessed man that both my kids and my daughter-in-law on the front row tonight. Some of you have served so many others, and it's your kids that are just about to break your heart. Don't carry that burden alone. We're going to fight with you. We're going to stand with you. We're going to believe with you. And I just don't believe God intended for you to have to sacrifice your family on that altar of ministry. He's going to bless you. He's going to honor you. You've been taking care of His kids. He's going to take care of your kids. Prodigals will be coming home. And the hearts of fathers are going to turn back to the sons, and sons back to the fathers. Now, I want to invite our bishops and our leaders and our pastors and all of you, if you would, let's just come and surround this group. If God gives you a word, this is destiny. We're a Spirit-filled, Spirit-led group. If God gives you a word or a thought or something for somebody, pray for them. Put your hand on their back. Agree with them. Ask, how can I help shoulder that burden you're carrying? Some of you need a physical touch. Healing is here tonight. Healing is here tonight. He still does miracles. Come on, press in, Destiny. Press in. Press in.